Prime Minister of New Zealand. Interesting.
So many people have been so encouraging, comforting, touching. Well, but people from all around the world, and your tributes, everything in New Zealand have been so deeply appreciated.
And it's all from people's heart as well.
That's the great thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
All these years.
Yes,
We're
yes.
lucky to have it for 70 years.
Oh, really?
Come and see it. I'm right there. I'm so sorry, it's a big rush today.
Protocol dictates that I won't give a large amount of detail, but what I can share is that it was a warm conversation, that the King was deeply appreciative of the thoughts of New Zealand, deeply appreciative of the efforts that so many have made to come and pay their respects. He asked after whether, for instance, Kingi Tuheitia had been able to travel, and was clearly moved by the fact that he had come alongside a New Zealand delegation to pay his respects alongside others. And of course, more broadly, just a conversation about New Zealand and the Commonwealth.
Prime Minister, was King Charles reportedly said to Jameson Ardern that he'd like to come down to New Zealand at some point. Did he reiterate that? And if so, what did he say?
I've always sensed an eagerness from the King to visit with the people of New Zealand. It's clearly a place that he has deep affection for. And so, as I've said before, His Majesty has a standing invitation to visit New Zealand, and I expect at some point when it's appropriate that he will likely look to travel to realm countries. I can give no specifics, and nor would I. Of course, it's always up to the palace to discuss their travel intentions, not us.
Break down exactly how that meeting went, how long you had with him. Was it, were you guys alone?
Yes.
Was in the room?
Yeah. Of course, the expectation has been that with the period of mourning and so many other duties, that meetings would occur with realm leaders, but that they would be relatively short, as you can imagine. So I was there alongside the Prime Minister of Jamaica, who had just was about to undertake his meeting. We were invited into the room, introduced to His Majesty. We then had 10 or so minutes of conversation, and then a brief hello to Clark as well, and then on our way. But it was, amongst everything that is going on, so many duties for His Majesty at this time, you could see he really had placed priority on meeting with the leaders of realm countries.
Just explain about the second service with the realm countries.
The committal service? There's not too much detail that I can give to you, other than that we've been made aware that is a service that will involve family, household, and realm leaders, prime ministers and governors general. And that will take place after the funeral, and is a more limited event with, as I say, a smaller group of people attending.
So you're meeting again tomorrow with the King?
So tomorrow evening there is a reception for those international leaders who have made the journey to pay their respects to Her Majesty, hosted by the King. But today was an opportunity for a one-on-one. Tomorrow will obviously be a larger affair.
And you'll have chances to speak to other international leaders?
Yes, I would anticipate that would be the case, yes.
Is there anyone in particular that you're going to make a beeline for?
Look, as the opportunity arises to just again acknowledge those perhaps you may have met in the past or have particular areas of interest. Even the brief catch-up with the Prime Minister of Jamaica was a good opportunity. We haven't seen each other in person since CHOGM was last hosted here. Of course, many making their way to the UN General Assembly, but my experience is whenever leaders are in a room, they will take the opportunity to connect and reconnect with one another, particularly after such a long period apart.
Did you discuss with this trust about the process
No, not in any detail. Very briefly touched on some of these issues in one of our early conversations, but not in great detail. I think we're both very mindful of the environment in which we're transacting these conversations as well. But I have noted in the past when leaders at this present time are coming together, those themes do come through because it's a common experience. I particularly noted it at NATO. That was a common source of conversation. Here in Europe, energy, obviously, a good reason why that's dominating in those forums.
Did you get an update on the Defence Force personnel that are over here training Ukraine military personnel through this transit?
Actually, no, obviously that was an opportunity I had personally when on the Thursday evening when I arrived to connect. I, of course, under the banner of a discussion, when we briefly touched on Ukraine, I did make mention, of course, of the fact that we have troops here currently training volunteers and frontline forces from Ukraine. So I did take the opportunity to just, again, acknowledge the work we were doing together. She seemed all too familiar with the role New Zealand was playing and expressed her gratitude for it.
Prime Minister, you've been here a few days now and you've seen the hundreds of thousands of people lining up in queues around London. Can you give us an insight into what you've seen and what you make of the situation here at the moment?
I think what probably stands out to me the most is just how remarkable the people here have been. Clearly, as you will have seen, deeply moved by a sense of grief and sorrow at what they have lost, but there's a real solidarity amongst people. And you see that in times of sadness and crisis, people come together. You can see it here, the long queues, but the dignity and patience that everyone is displaying, it's quite something to observe.
Is the equity of the situation that even we talk about tomorrow night, where all these world leaders will be in the same space, and it's such a unique.
There is no doubt this is an incredibly unique situation. I can't imagine a person who would be able to bring people together in mourning in the way that Her Majesty has. And I think that's a demonstration of the broad respect in which she was held for a life of service.
You have to give us a flavour of your programme tomorrow. Are there any more details about what you're doing?
I'm undertaking a media interview in the UK. I'm then will be part of the gathering of New Zealanders who have travelled great distance to be part of the events tomorrow, and then we do have to make ourselves available relatively early to take part in the reception later on that afternoon. And otherwise, in preparation for what will be a very full day on Monday, we depart immediately after the events. On the Monday, again, we will be called upon to make ourselves available quite early and quite a period in advance of the funeral itself, just because of the sheer logistics of moving everyone around. I don't have too much further detail on that, but I am happy simply to go with the flow. If they ask me to walk, I would be fine with that.
Do you think you'll come back next year for the coronation?
There hasn't been too much discussion of that. Obviously, in the past, there's been separation between these events, and it will be up to the palace to determine the timing there. I couldn't give any further comment at this stage. All of these things will depend so much on timing. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all the latest news from the New Zealand Herald. Click the subscribe button below or check out one of the videos here, and head over to nzherald.co.nz for more details on these stories and more.